Hey girl, Marissa here. You are listening to the Codependent Dummy podcast. As a young woman, you have been raised, reinforced, and rewarded for putting the needs of others above your own. Now, in your 20s, you're finding yourself exhausted, exasperated, and enveloped in shit relationships, especially the one you have with yourself. Codependency is a way of being where we put the feelings, wants, and needs of others above our own in an unconscious attempt to meet our own feelings, wants, and needs. Sorry to break it to you, sis, but that is not sustainable. This podcast is to help you undo all that so you can stop playing small and start taking up space, you dummy. Let's get to it. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Codependent Dummy podcast. Today, this is a day that will go down in history. This is our first time interviewing a guest for the second time. We are joined by Ofra Obejas. She is a child and trauma therapist and supervisor in the Los Angeles area. She presents courses to therapists on various topics on simple practice, learning, and other platforms. Ofra, thank you for coming back to the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me, Marissa. Your podcast is a service, and I'm honored to be on it.
Thank you. I need to hear that every now and again because sometimes I do episodes, solo casts, or with guests, and I'm like, Marissa, what are you doing? Why does this matter? So, and a service. Thank you. All right, so it is your second time, but codependency is such a nuanced and difficult concept to really understand and see in our lives. So I'm curious to hear how you define codependency.
The previous time I talked about how children become codependent.
Right.
I defined codependency as putting the needs of others above our own because trying to meet our own needs is unsafe or intolerable.
Right.
I gave the example of how when I was a child, when my older sister stood up for herself, my parents sent her away. Mm-hmm. I was afraid that if I try to get my needs met, I would be thrown out of the house too. So I try to make sure everyone's needs in the family were met to prove that I was worth keeping.
Right.
When talking about burnout in this episode, in a job or in a relationship, I define codependency this way: putting the needs of others above our own in order to prove our worth.
Mm-hmm. Right. In order to prove our worth. Because we don't sense we have it, a lot of it, on a deep level.
Because there's a risk that if we are not doing everything we can to prove that we're valuable, we are going to be rejected. Mm-hmm. And literally, in the case of my family.
Right. And you have been on before, you have shared before about codependency in your own life. Another experience of codependency may be related to our focus today on burnout.
I have an example from my time that I worked in community mental health. And this is just a snapshot that is typical to my 6 years in community mental health jobs. And I will explain later how do I define burnout and why the experience of working there led to burnout. So this is Perfect. When I was working in a group home with teenagers on probation or in foster care. So it's 6:45 in the evening one day. I'm in bumper to bumper traffic on the 10 freeway. going from Hollywood 25 miles east to El Monte to do a home session with my client. I'll call her Anita, with Anita's parents. For people not familiar with the Los Angeles area, 25 miles could be 2.5 hours.
Right.
So in this case, Anita's father had served 6 months in prison for molesting her. And her passive mother is, they're both going to be at home and I'm going to see them and I'm going to talk to them in Spanish, which I'm not fluent in. So this is the end of my workday, and all the energy that I have saved for this very tough family therapy session is draining as I'm watching the miles of brake lights ahead of me. So how did I get up here? None of this was required by my job. The job didn't require driving to the client's home. We saw the clients in the home, in our group home, not in their home. It didn't require that I speak Spanish, and it didn't even require family therapy. My job was just to be the therapist of the teenagers in the group home. But what happened is Anita's parents would come to visit once a week, and somebody asked me to do family therapy while they were there. My hours were 12 to 8. So Nita's father would get out of work, drive and pick up her mother from home, and then they would drive from El Monte to Hollywood. They were always late. They were supposed to be there at 7, but sometimes they would arrive as late as 7:55. My supervisor told me, no matter what time they get here, you still do an hour of family therapy.
Why?
I was furious. I was resentful of the agency for not respecting my hours, for the parents for not being able to keep an appointment on time, and in general for the system of mental health, who thought this was a good idea to have family therapy with these particular parents. What was I doing? So even though I was very, very resentful, I didn't feel like I could voice any of this, be a stick in the mud, a whiner, not a team player. So I would catch myself trying to sneak out at 7:59 through the back door. Nobody would see me. And I could still say, I was here and they weren't here. Because if I left through the front door at 8 o'clock and they just pulled into the parking lot, I would have to turn back and do an hour session with them.
Wow.
So I came up with a solution. I would drive to their home on my time and my dime in my car, in the tradition of community mental health, which you've shared on the podcast, Marisa. You've done some work in community mental health, and the slogan is doing whatever it takes.
Right.
So if the clients can't come to us, we go to them. So this was my solution, which nobody had asked me to do. What I could have done was say things like, I can't stay at work until 9. This job is 12 to 8. I have to leave at 8. Somebody at my home needs me. I could have asked the policy about hours. I could have said that Anita's father's a creep and I don't want to be in the same room with him. I could have said I have no training. Yeah, he really was. Not to get into the weeds here, but he had served time in prison. There was no he said, she said. He was convicted. He went to jail. And yet when I would bring it up, he just looked at me, gave him the silent treatment as if he didn't know what I was talking about. And it was pretty creepy. And the mother was very passive. I could have said I have no training working with sex offenders. I could have done a lot of things, and I didn't feel that I should complain, because then I'm going to be not a team player. So anyway, the upshot is that I called my supervisor from the freeway and said, I'm not going to get there. This is bumper to bumper traffic. Can I please have permission to abort this mission? Asking permission. And my supervisor, what was she going to say? No, stay on the freeway. So she said, yes, it's okay for you to, let them know you're not coming, and you can go home.
But that wasn't a given, because previously, if they walked in at 7:55, she said, you're going to have a session at 7:55. So you did need to ask her permission.
Yeah, instead of saying there's no point, I'm stuck on the freeway, what is the point of all of this? So, she could have said no, I'm not really sure what I would have done, but she did say okay. And then we realized that this could always happen. And so I never went to the home again, nor did they ever come to the agency again. So the really, this wasn't anything that I had to do. It was just an idea.
Right.
And this is just a typical example. Marissa, I'm sure you have so many of your own of working in that type of work environment.
Yep. Yeah, I remember I gave up my Saturdays. I think it was every other Saturday, but mom lived closer to USC and the daughter lived closer to Pasadena. I lived like 25, 30 miles east of Pasadena, but I would drive to get the kids. There were siblings. We'd meet at McDonald's for a family session. I'd drive them home and then I'd go home. It was
Like 5 hours.
right? But
Yeah.
mom didn't have availability Monday
Mhm.
through Friday.
Okay, you got to do what you got
So
to do. You
yeah,
cannot hold the clients as capable adults. That was
no.
pretty much the belief of the system is they can't, so you can.
And also what you talked about, codependency at work, putting the needs of others above my own to prove my worth.
Mhm.
Please have this indicate how worthy I am as a person.
Yeah, and mistakenly thinking that in that type of work environment, they're going to remember that I went above and beyond, that I came up with solutions, that I was not a whiner. So if I ever messed up, there would be no cause to fire me because they will remember all the good things that I've done, as if it was
Mm,
credit that I deposited in the bank. And when it came time to withdraw, they go, "Oh, there's still money here. You're not overdrawn. We don't need to fire you because you proved that you're good. You
mhm.
did good things and proved you're good." And of course, I don't need to tell you because you worked in those environments that when I did mess up one time, I was written up and nobody ever took the time to say,
Mm,
"Oh, but remember all the good things that you did." It
right.
didn't count at all.
Mm, yeah. Which this is codependency at work, right? Burnout in that environment, but also that is our universal experience in relationships. This effort to gain credit, approval, unconditional love, and then yeah, we sense the conditions yet again, and it's so painful,
Yeah, like you remember all the good things I did for you, so you'll forgive me the one time that I do the bad thing
right?
because I proved that I was good. This
Mhm.
is just a mishap.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I I think it's obvious how this kind of an environment leads to burnout, but I did want to define what burnout is and how we contribute to our own burnout.
Okay.
So,
Well,
yeah,
yeah. What is we use it again like codependency? It's an overused, understood term. So, Ofra, what is burnout?
well, it's not a mental health diagnosis.
Mm,
It's a term that describes a condition that can happen in certain environments. When we talk about work, like job burnout, but it can be even in anything that you do for some time, like a relationship that you're in, a hobby, or even something that you're passionate about doing. And you really wanted to spend your time doing this for volunteering or just for the fun. And burnout is a special type of stress, physical or emotional exhaustion, along with a reduced sense of accomplishment and a loss of personal identity. So you might
mm,
notice thinking things like, I don't see the point anymore. It used to be fun, but now it's a drag. Or I don't even remember why I wanted to do it in the first place. Who was that person who wanted to do this?
mm,
So those are typical questions. So yes, work, we say work is work because it's hard. It can be stressful, and relationships can be stressful, but even with challenges and irritations, and when things don't work out, overall, we can get a sense of accomplishment and feel good about what we do and about ourselves. But when we constantly feel drained and exhausted, we don't see the purpose anymore, and we start feeling like we don't even recognize ourselves, that is likely a sign of burnout.
Mm. Okay. So it's stress, physical and emotional exhaustion, loss of a sense of self. What was the fourth?
Yeah, a loss of purpose, and no, you don't get a sense of accomplishment, and you don't recognize yourself anymore.
Accomplishment. Right.
Yeah, like, what are we even doing here? Does anybody even care? What is this for?
Right.
Why are we doing this?
Yeah, I believe I have shared about this on the podcast, but I used to joke with my colleagues when I was in community mental health, really in the trenches of my codependency in that professional setting. And sometimes the children and adolescents would threaten to kill themselves. And I joked with my colleagues that on a Friday, right at the end of the day, I was like, if this kid says he wants to kill himself, I'm gonna say, me too. Let's go to the hospital together. Because I was done. I was done. I didn't, yeah, I had zero fucks left. Like, okay, if you're gonna say it, like, let's go together. Because me too.
Yeah. How do you
I'm
suggest doing
exhausted.
it?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah, we needed to have dark humor in those environments. Sometimes things
Oh
were
my
very, very
gosh.
difficult.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
darkest.
Yeah,
And
they were hard.
yeah, what mm, well, yeah, I know you and I discussed looking at how we contribute to our own burnout, but before that, your thoughts on how codependency and burnout relate.
Okay, so I describe what burnout is, but we can ask, but why does it happen? How do you go from I love my job to I can't stand it one more second? What causes these feelings? Well, I believe that what causes it is moral injury. That is a term that is usually used in the military to explain PTSD, like when soldiers are commanded to do things that go against their values. But when we're in different environments, when it's not as dire as in the military, when we have to constantly suppress or change our own emotions in order to perform a job function or be in a relationship, that is the same to me as the moral injury, having to do things that I don't believe in.
Wow.
When
Wow.
I heard that term after years in community mental health, it just made sense to me. I said, that's what it was. And I can give you an example, again, typical of the years in the trenches.
Right.
Um, I was working in a group home where I was repeatedly told not to report child abuse. So there was a case where staff members didn't follow safe procedure, and they restrained and carried my client like an airplane, like somebody holds the arms, somebody holds the legs, and they just carry her like a sack of potatoes, which is not the safe way to carry somebody when you're trying to restrain them and move them. And they dropped her, which is exactly why you don't do that. And they knocked a tooth loose in her
Oh
mouth.
my goodness.
Yeah, I wasn't there when that happened.
Oh
I
my
read an incident
goodness.
report, and it was my job to call the social worker and read aloud the incident report. And I could not do it with a straight face. There was some story about how she ran into a wall and that knocked her tooth out. And it's like, I have to say these words and kind of pretend that I believe what I'm reading. And of course, I met her and I saw her. I knew that this isn't what happened. So my agency telling me to cover up the abuse is certainly a problem. There was certainly very big problems in that agency, but I did it. I could have refused. I could have said, I am not going to read that lie. and I don't care if you fire me. And I don't care if you so don't sign off on my hours and I don't get licensed because of that. But I went in the profession to help children and ease their suffering and heal them. And here I am covering up child abuse.
Right.
And it makes you split from yourself. Like, who am I? Why am I doing this? Who is the person who went to help children and now is covering up child abuse,
Right.
even if it's the work that's telling me to do it? So that is an example of the moral injury.
Right. And going back to codependency, I have to put the needs of the agency, of my supervisors telling me this, of everybody in the group home who was involved, their need to not get in trouble. And so I will put that above my own need for integrity, for a sense of like morality. So taking care of children who are hurt, to prove my worth as a dutiful, loyal, lovable employee.
And not a troublemaker.
Not a troublemaker.
Somebody you
right? Especially you, right? In your background, right? With this juxtaposition of your sister and you. I know I had a similar. So my older sister's the rebel. I'm like on time and my room's clean when she's messy and late. But yeah, just really not just this staunch rule that you cannot do that. You cannot cause trouble.
Yeah, you are not a reason that something is not going well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I had another thought. Well, I mean, the moral injury related to codependency and what do you make of this pattern that we do create where we are reinforced to endure moral injury by keeping secrets, by not expressing our feelings, by pretending everything's okay?
Well, it certainly serves the workplace. You have a line in the beginning of your podcast. We were raised, reinforced, and rewarded. Well, you're onboarded to a job already being told your job could change, the duties are not exactly what they say, and then you get rewarded by raises or promotions or acknowledgement. And so it's reinforced. If you play along, you're a good worker, you're valued. The same way that it was reinforced in the family, you're not a complainer. That means we were happy to have you. And in the case of my family, we're not going to throw you out. The next time we throw somebody out, it's not going to be you.
Yeah.
But yeah, you asked a good question. How do the codependent contribute to our own work, to our own burnout? And I wanted to answer that.
Okay.
So after 6 years of going from job to job in community mental health, and not finding any place that was a good fit. Certainly not the agency with no boundaries, but there were places that were a little better than that. And I found myself writing messages to my sisters saying the same thing about my current horrible job that I said about the job before that and the one before that one. And I went, oh, it's not me. It's the work environment. That's what's causing the burnout. And yes, we have a word for community mental health in Los Angeles. We call it the burnout track.
Right.
And for a good reason. There's certainly things in that environment like unreasonable and unrealistic productivity expectations, senseless paperwork, and narcissistic directors. Yes, the environment is certainly responsible. But the belief is that job burnout is a factor of the work environment. Like, well, my boss is a jerk, or this company doesn't care about employees or customers, or I'm not killing myself for $7 an hour. My customers don't appreciate what I do for them anyway. But these are all, it's them, it's them, it's them. But um, many people in our profession, therapists, go into private practice and they're still burnt out. So it can't be just the job environment. Is it our profession? Is it because we're in a helping profession? Is that why? But can you say, well, anybody in a helping profession is going to be burnt out? What do we do? What is it about us that lead to burnout? It is now commonly believed that half of the reason for burnout is our behavior and how we manage our relationships. So if burnout is caused by poor boundaries, it's not only other people who are doing it to us, it's we are doing it to ourselves.
Right.
What are some behaviors that we do that lead to burnout? Not saying no to something we don't feel comfortable doing, going above and beyond, doing things that are not even asked of us, like the example I gave. Nobody asked me to drive to the client's home. Yes, Saturdays, bring the kids over. Not setting clear and firm limits on our time and competencies. We say yes to everything, whether we have the bandwidth or the skill. Why? Again, we do this to prove that we're worthy and valuable. We tell ourselves that we're self-sacrificing to help people. But what we're really doing is we're trying to make ourselves feel safe and secure. If I can show my boss or my friend or a significant other that I'm worthy and valuable, they won't fire me or reject me. They're not going to throw me out.
Right. So not saying no and then saying yes to everything, right?
Yeah, as your smile gets tighter and tighter, you're doing it. It's like, oh, I'm happy to do it. And that's again the split, the burnout is you're constantly suppressing your own emotions and you're pretending, you're acting as if you're somebody else. And that's the loss of identity. And like, who am I doing this for anymore? I'm not doing it for myself for sure.
Right.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. The example I gave of, being stuck on a freeway, there were so many boundaries I crossed there. Driving my own car to the client's house. What if I were in an accident? The agency is not going to pay for it. Sitting in a home of sex offenders, of a sex offender, and in his family home on his turf. Like, what am I doing? I didn't know how to handle that at that time. And maybe that's not a case I would still take. In Spanish, I was not fluent in Spanish. What am I doing? It's hard enough to do in my native tongue, and I'm trying to do it in Spanish. Like, what am I trying to prove here? And then, of course, when the session is over, then I'm in a sketchy part of town. It's dark. It's not safe. I mean, just so many things were wrong with that picture.
Right. Yeah. All to prove our worth. And yeah, I have observed this. I'm sure I've talked about it on the podcast, but witnessing my colleagues and even myself go from the trenches of community mental health to the spaciousness of, I was at a group practice with a bunch of other therapists and now having my own private practice and still being as busy, as stressed, as burnt out, despite so many differences in the work environment. And so, yeah, you really sense that half of what contributes to burnout is our mistaken motive to prove our worth at work.
Yeah, to our clients, I'll see you anytime, anywhere. You can reschedule. I'm available. I care about you. Call me anytime. Yeah, not setting those limits, even when we are our own bosses.
Right. Yeah. It is the irony of being in private practice and yeah, talking with and observing myself. I'm like, wait, we've made it. Like, isn't this, yeah, isn't this where we relax and I don't know, read and do other things, but
And
no,
I still burnt out.
right.
And maybe it's because of the pandemic, but therapists have never been this burnt out. Um, I was joking when the pandemic started, and many therapists, even if they'd never worked online, suddenly switched to working online to meet demand for services. And many people were just working 6 days a week, 7 days a week, any time of the day, because you're in your room. You can turn on the computer and just working ridiculous hours as if we were not ourselves in the pandemic. So when people ask me, how are you doing? I said, I've moved to Mars and I come down for a session and then I go back to Mars. The pandemic does not impact me. I'm here to serve you. My needs, I am not impacted by it. I'm not affected by it. And we were all pretending that, well, I'm not going to say all, but many therapists were pretending that they were above it, that they were not exhausted. From hour and after hour on Zoom and seeing clients with telehealth, and we could do it. Yeah, we have the bandwidth, literally and figuratively.
Right. Right. Okay. So what what do we as codependents need to watch out for, Ofra, to avoid burnout at work?
The burnout codependency question is, where am I self-neglecting or abandoning myself for the perceived benefit of others? I mean, others might not even need what I think they need. This is just what I think they need. Am I
Right.
saying yes to things I don't want to do because I don't want to disappoint? I don't want to cause trouble or start a conflict. Or the reverse, I am not doing things that I want to do for the same reasons. Because I don't want to get fired, or I don't want to have my reputation suffer. I don't want people to think badly of me. And I love that people say, oh, that's okay. I use self care. I'm not going to burn out because I'm using self care, the so called self care to counter any bad feelings that you might get from the job. It's stressful. Okay, so I use self care. And that's a myth. The advice used to be, if you're suffering from burnout at work, use self care. Get a
Right.
massage, drink kale smoothies,
Take a bath.
do yoga, light a candle. Yeah, that will undo all of that. I have some clients who are therapists themselves. I had one client, a therapist who worked in community mental health on Skid Row with women who were drug addicts, addicted to some substances in recovery or not. She was doing all these self-care things and she still felt burnt out. And then she felt bad about herself for failing at self-care.
Right.
And I said to her, there's not enough yoga in the world to undo your work damage. The job was physically dangerous, and the women could attack each other and her at any time. There was only one security guard. She was told to counsel, do therapy with women who were so traumatized and needed so many resources. They were homeless and addicted to drugs so much beyond what the agency could provide. And it was a lie to these women that they can get better by just going to therapy. And by selling that lie herself, she was betraying herself.
Right.
Not to
That
mention
moral injury.
yeah, the moral injury on top of course, all the things that went wrong. And I helped her make sense of this, and she got to a point where she realized that it was okay for her to leave the job.
Wow.
And she got a job she loved, and things really got turned around in her life.
How did
but
she get to that point?
because of my experience in those kind of agencies, I just asked her the questions and made her realize that no matter what she did, she couldn't do what she was supposed to do.
Mm,
And what she was told to do wasn't going to achieve the supposed purpose, that they were all just participating in some big collusion. And, the mayor would show up and take photo ops. And she just said, this is ridiculous. We're not helping these people, and we're pretending that we are.
mm,
And I think realizing that it wasn't just not being able to do it, but having to pretend and play along and say things that you don't believe,
right,
that everybody was an actor in a play. and
right.
and that I've had those experiences myself, that I knew what it was like to be in it. I think she believed that I knew what it was like to be in that position. It wasn't the only case that I've had like that.
Right. So I'm hearing, thanks to her work with you, you helped her question her, yeah, like why she was there and what she was doing and who was it for or who was it serving, right? So really questioning. And I say this kindly, but just being critical of the environment, right? There's photo ops, there's one security guard, they're homeless. Just like this we're pretending to help, and really becoming conscious of the moral injury it was having on her to be
Right.
providing this service that was what she sensed ultimately a disservice to herself and these women.
Yeah, that it wasn't doable, and that she shouldn't blame herself for failing at self-care. What's wrong with me? I'm doing as much yoga as I can. I'm drinking as much. I mean, she really was doing all these things. And that's why I said there aren't enough hours of yoga that can undo what's happening at your work.
I remember I tried to paint my nails every weekend. So if I painted my nails, that was a signal that I was taking time, right? I can't be on my phone when I paint my nails. I'm focused. It's therapeutic. It is therapeutic to paint one's nails. But then on Sunday evenings, I would be all anxious because I hadn't painted my nails. And
Oh, you failed self-care.
I failed self-care. I'm such a bad self-caring therapist. And yeah, it actually, so I appreciate you being critical about when we are giving recommendations to take care of ourselves, they may be helpful, but also why such a need to take care of ourselves? And is it the environment, the position, the family, the relationship we're in that
Yeah, the
needs
way
to
we're
be
behaving in an environment,
questioned?
not speaking up. And it's not that there isn't self-care. It's self-care is not that. It's not kale smoothies and mani pedis. It's not, that's not self-care. Self-care is, what is the true self-care is expressing our own needs and trying to meet them. That is self-care.
Mic drop. Identifying our needs and expressing them.
And
That's
hopefully trying to meet them. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That is self-care. Just being aware of all the self violations when we don't speak up, when we are not asking for what we need. This is a true self-care, is saying, oh, huh, wonder why I'm not asking for what I need, and what happens if I did.
Right. And sometimes it could be identifying the need for, I'm physically tense, so I need to relax. So I am going to go get a massage. But yeah, also questioning, why am I tense? And yeah, is it because I'm in
Exactly.
unsafe environments? And it's like, if I'm in unsafe environments, I need to assert that I need safety.
Right. And go for a massage.
Right.
I'm not against massages and yoga and kale smoothies, but why are we working so hard to undo something? And is that really going to undo it?
Right. Okay. And then I'm curious your thoughts on what do we need to watch out for to avoid burnout in relationships?
Same thing, not speaking up, not expressing when we're doing something we don't want to do. Um, the way to speak up would be in a relationship, especially is to use I messages, which means we're not blaming the other person. We just say something is not meeting my need. Something about this is not working for me. What can we do about it? When in personal relationships, especially, I think what gets in the way is social anxiety, which is a whole nother topic. And I taught a class about that. You might want to put a note link to that if you can find.
Okay.
But social anxiety meeting codependency, there's like the Venn diagram of what is social anxiety. Basically, when we imagine what people will think of us, we imagine they'll criticize us or will think badly of us and they'll reject us. They're not going to like me. So we avoid messing up or speaking up when something bothers us. I'll give an example of a young girl that I work with. I'll call her Kylie. So Kylie is playing with a friend, and the friend accidentally scratches Kylie's face with her fingernail and really cuts her. Like she was bleeding. And Kylie was so afraid to say to her friend, "Did you realize that you just cut me?" Because then her friend will be mad at her and not like her and not be her friend anymore. Which is, in social anxiety, yes, those thoughts are not rational, but they're there. And that's the disordered thinking. That's why we call it a disorder, social anxiety disorder. And I encourage Kylie to say, it's okay to say, hey, did you realize? Did you? I know you didn't do it on purpose, but did you realize? Can you be more careful next time? What do you think? Do you think your friend is not going to be a friend anymore because you said something like that? And that's the treatment for social anxiety. But it's okay to ask questions, to clarify. Every time we meet for coffee, you're late. Is like, is there something wrong with our time? Can we do something about it instead of just sitting there and building resentment? And then you get burned out on the relationship. You can help you set priorities. Is this important to you? Should I really do this for you, or is something else more important?
Right.
Sometimes whatever we say is not going to change anything, but at least people know how we feel about it. One, I bashed community mental health enough, but one of my proudest moments in one of those agencies was after a series of measures the agency took against the therapists. You need to start punching a clock. You send message when you show up, when you leave. They're treating us like we didn't care about our work anymore because productivity was low. But there was a different reason. They just instituted a new electronic health record management system that was just a nightmare. Suddenly productivity is low, and it must be because you guys don't care anymore. And I stood up in a meeting.
Ofra, just really quick, just so everybody knows. So electronic health record, it's just a very complicated platform where we would log our notes and every activity that we did. And so if it's new, there's an onboarding. Yeah, there's a learning process.
Yeah, like you would put on your notes and they would disappear. Okay, it was not a good one. It was notoriously not a good one.
Wow.
So, but the way management treated is like obviously you guys are leaving early. That's why their productivity is low. You don't care anymore. You're pretending to work, but you're not working. I mean, it was just ridiculous. So I stood up in a meeting and I said, I realize that what I say here, the managers might not like it, but I have served in the military. I did. I was 18. I was in the military.
Wow.
And when you messed up there, you could go to jail. if you didn't do your work the way you were supposed to, you said no, you could go to jail. I was court-martialed once for jaywalking. So for real, this was not a hypothetical. And I said, the worst thing you can do to me, Community Mental Health Agency, is fire me. So I'm going to say what I want. You don't like it, you don't like it.
Wow.
My coworkers told me later that they will never forget it. You served in the army, and you could have gone to jail. So, I mean, what are we afraid of? What is the worst thing that could happen? Yes, that's a tool in social anxiety treatment. What's the worst thing that could happen? Is your friend really going to leave you because you let them know that they hurt you? Is your friend really going to say you're not worth it anymore? And you know what? If that's all it takes, maybe it's not the friendship that you want. In the workplace, really, what is the worst thing they can do to you?
Right.
They can't, I don't know, other than firing you. What more can they do? They can't take your money away. They can't make you homeless. I mean, yeah, sometimes you can say, I need this job and I can't afford to lose it. But in my the final community mental health agency I was in, where people said, well, you're thinking of leaving. Not everybody has the luxury to be able to leave the job. I need the job. And I said, I would rather go to my neighbors and ask them if they want me to clean their toilets so that I can earn money that way than continue here.
Right.
The moral injury was just too much for me. And I was serious. I left that job, not having another job lined up because it takes time. I said, yeah, if that's what it has to come to, that's what it comes to. I'm just thinking, worst case, I'm not going to be homeless.
Right. Which is a place that we get to, I sense, on our road recovering from codependency. But yeah, what's the worst that could happen? Right? Kylie's friend not wanting to be her friend in that moment, it is the worst. But yeah, really trying to, again, like question, like think critically, right? Develop that like big picture, mature, independent part of us. That's when we can really sense like it really will be okay. If Kylie's upset, I don't want her as a friend. If I can't speak up at this job, I don't really want to work here. But I think that's something that we develop over time.
Yeah, it's unfortunate when I get to a point where I really have nothing to lose, so I can speak up. I don't care anymore if they don't value me. And I wish that in my recovery from codependency, that I see everything as, what have I got to lose? Really, what I think I've got to lose, that's really not realistic, or worst case, okay, I can live with that. So I can speak up.
Yeah, I remember one time during supervision. So for all the listeners, therapists as associates, at least in California, we have to sit in group for 2 hours every week with, a supervisor, maybe two, and 8 other therapists as we're talking about our clients and the work and getting ideas. And I remember one time we had group, and for like 20 or 30 minutes, the supervisors who had both had children and a couple other female therapists, associates in the group who like had just had children, they were just talking about kids and babies for like 20 minutes, like 30 minutes. And I was like, I'm here for supervision. I'm not here to learn about like some cool toy or some tip to handle potty training. So yeah, I was sitting there and I was stewing and I was stewing and I was stewing, trying to be patient. That's the hard thing too, right? You mentioned waiting for a friend to get coffee, and every time you notice they're late. So to say something I do during those times is I try and dissuade my feelings, right? So I say, just be patient, Marissa. It's okay. Who cares if they're talking about baby stuff? Who cares? It's fine. Right?
Right.
Just
And
trying
that's the
to,
split, the suppressing and
right.
trying to change your feelings. I don't really feel this way. Right. And that is a threat to our nervous system. Our nervous system, when we get, oh, we shouldn't feel this way. This isn't really how I feel, is activated.
Right.
And of course, that's what leads to the exhaustion in
Right.
burnout, when we are
Yeah.
constantly suppressing.
Yeah. And I interrupted. I was like, excuse me. And I think my voice was shaking because I was so terrified. But I was like, I'm here for supervision. So if we could please focus on that, I really appreciate it. And
yeah, it makes sense that your voice was shaking because your nervous system was activated and adrenaline was coursing.
right. And so everyone looked at me and my supervisors were like, yeah, okay. So who wants to start, right, with the case? And it felt good to speak up because I think that actually had been a trend. So maybe the first 20 or 30 minutes of supervision, we were just shooting the shit.
Social hour, bring the margaritas.
We had other time we had other meetings for that. And, I'm a therapist. I want to talk about my cases. And, I'm taking this seriously. And later on, the two supervisors called me in and they were like, Marissa, what is going on? Right. So it was my fault. It was
Wow.
my rigidity,
You're not a team player.
my burnout, my
Wow.
being too invested, or I don't know, too serious. And yeah,
You're not playing along. We were doing a social hour and you're not playing along.
right. So
Yeah,
I
it's a
think
perfect example of the intersection of it's the job's fault for sure, but not speaking up now becomes your own behavior and how you're contributing. And you
right.
did speak up. So what did you make of it when you did speak up and then you were chastised for speaking up?
I can't remember consciously, but I'm 90% positive I walked out of there feeling ashamed and embarrassed that I had said anything. And yeah, likely reprimanded myself for not being a team player.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, so that was the job requirement, play along. And when we're socializing, you socialize.
yeah, your time, even though you don't have enough of it for these 20 or 30 minutes, it's not valuable. We're gonna focus on other things and that too, like I had so much to do. I couldn't tolerate talking about baby stuff. And so yeah, I think I walked out of there feeling mixed emotions, questioning my anger and frustration. And I sense it was just multiple experiences like that where thankfully my therapist, oh man, did she help me question those interactions in a healthy manner where I was able to say, like, okay, I need to leave this environment.
I'm so glad you had somebody help you do a reality check, because this is classic gaslighting. We're not doing what we're supposed to do in meetings, and you complain about it, and we tell you that you are wrong.
Right.
That's what we should do in our meetings. We should be cash. We should chat. That is such a classic gaslighting that happens in those agencies. But again, that's their part, and your part is to make sense of it to yourselves, and you did.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we're wishing that for all the listeners.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Ofra. Well, I know you have a handout. Can you share what you're offering the listeners?
Yeah, it's a list of the things that cause burnout, both in the environment. In other words, yes, the job that's caused burnout because of things they do, but also the internal parts, well, the part that we play, and then things that could be done to set limits, to be clear about our boundaries, in order to speak up and manage at least our part of the contribution to the burnout.
I love it. Okay, well, we'll put links to that in the show note. Your training, your workshop on social anxiety, contact information, and thank you for coming back.
Oh,
thank you
such
so
a pleasure.
much. Yeah, so we'll do it again, right? We're going to be here at least 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I look forward to
a
having you
trend,
on
invite
again.
people back.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you everyone for listening, and we will see you all next week. Hey girl, it's Marissa again. I'm not like a regular podcaster, I'm a cool podcaster, right? Thank you for listening and staying till the end. You can find me on Instagram at therapywithmarissa. Email me, marissa@codependummy.com. Check out codependummy.com for more information on the show. And baby girl, a subscribe, rating, and review would be much appreciated. Till next time, I want you to remember, if you are feeling unseen, I see you. If you are feeling unheard, I hear you. And if you think that you don't matter, know that you matter to me. I want you to go out there so you can stop playing small and start taking up space, you dummy. And now, the disclaimer. Girl, this is not therapy and I am not your therapist. This podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regards to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, publisher, or guests are rendering any legal, clinical, or other professional service. If you want or need a professional, please find one.